Hello, welcome to Communication Through the Ages. We're going to bring you through all the innovations that really revolutionized communication through history. We're going to start off in the distant past to give you some perspective on how things used to be and how they're so different compared to how they are now. There weren't many options before modern innovations like the telephone and the telegraph. Some people's best bet was putting a letter on a pigeon and letting it fly. But there were more legitimate methods of communication. I'm going to talk about two specifically that were very prominent. We're going to start off with broadsides, which were pieces of paper that are printouts that could contain really any kind of information and were great for communication for that reason. They were some of the most common forms of printed material in the early modern period. They could be produced cheaply and quickly. And they were often used for advertisement and entertainment. Maybe not so much personal communication between people, but they were great for widespread messages. And they were great for their time period. Moving on, I'm going to talk about the horseback messenger. This was also more for commercial communication more than personal communication. They were known as post riders more widely, and they were primarily for, as I said, use of government and military communication. Civil correspondence was generally ruled out. One of the earliest accounts of horseback riding is in the Hanseatic League in the year 1274. This iteration of the horseback rider handled business and diplomatic messages. Moving on to the 17th century, the Holy Roman Empire developed a sophisticated system of post stations. They became the center of communication, and because of that, they were also the center of economic development. They became crucial in facilitating the construction of new villages, buildings, and eventually cities. We can fast forward from here to the recent past, actually in the American colonies. Here we can see a much more organized iteration of mailing on horseback. They actually had given roles and a developed system. They had the Postmaster General, a secretary/comptroller, 3 surveyors, 1 inspector of dead letters. They also had 26 post riders and 75 post offices in total. Unfortunately, this was coming up on the industrial period in America, so they were quickly being put out of business by better, more efficient methods of transportation and communication. The most prominent would be the railroad system. And so that meant that post stations were often distant from the railroad tracks. They were set up in areas maybe that were more remote away from society.
Samuel Morse was the inventor of the telegraph. He developed the invention in 1837, but further developed it in the 1840s. He created the beginning of the evolution of communication. Samuel was the co-inventor of Morse code, the method of transmitting textual information as a series of on and off tones. In order to communicate through this invention, people had to learn Morse code. Morse code is an arrangement of dots and dashes with each combination referred to as one letter of the alphabet. Electrical current pulses are sent along a wire with the Morse code encoding. Telegraphing involved a sender, a receiver, and a cable between them. The first telegraph system was set for communication between Washington, D.C. and Baltimore, Maryland. The system was set up and tested by Morse and Vail in 1843, which was funded by the U.S. Congress. The first message that was sent through the telegraph was on May 24, 1844. The message read, "What hath God wrought?" The telegraph system progressed slowly, and many attempts failed to make the system work for the entire country. It slowly started to facilitate railroads, expand business possibilities, and help determine how wars were fought. Rather than taking weeks to be delivered by horse and carriage mail carts, pieces of news could be exchanged between telegraph stations almost instantly. A message from New York to London could be sent in just a few minutes. Samuel slowly continued to spread his invention, and he extended the telegraph line surely nationwide. This invention was soon found in almost every home as the telegraph revolutionized long-distance communication.
As the US grew more and more in size, the technology at that time evolved tremendously, especially with the introduction of the telephone. Alexander Graham Bell was the inventor of such creation, being introduced in March of 1876, with the first ever call being between Bell and his assistant, Thomas Watson. The first step in creating such an influential design was the use of the harmonic telegraph, which was explained earlier in the video. This, as well as with the help of a receiver Bell created that converted electricity into sound, a new and more convenient form of communication was born. But, like most new revolutionary items at that time, not many people had it, as only the wealthy could afford to pay around $4,000 to have it in their homes. Eventually, telephones became more and more common in American households, as it increased in appearance by over 63% from 1920 to 2008, with more modern iterations being released as well, such as this one and this one. But eventually, a new invention would take its place as the best communication device available.
The cell phone. It is the single most impactful advancement humanity made in the 21st century. It allows for the same long-distance communication of the telephone, but it is small enough to be put in a pants pocket. People can carry it with them wherever they go, so information can be passed in a second's notice. Not to mention the millions of functions it has outside of that. From the innumerable apps to the internet access, it puts the world in the user's hands. It best demonstrates the connection between improvements to communication and improvements to our society as a whole. And with that, we'd like to thank you for your time. Hope you enjoyed our presentation.